Welcome to From Data to Justice. This presentation walks you through an exciting statistical framework developed by the TI One Voice platform. We're going to explore how structured data collection from thousands of targeted individuals can be transformed into real, courtroom-ready evidence, and we'll show you the projected timelines for achieving justice. Let's dive in. So here's the big question we're tackling. How long will it take to build a legal case strong enough to survive courtroom scrutiny? This study breaks that question down into 3 parts. First, how many TIs need to participate before we see statistically significant patterns emerge? Second, when do the key justice milestones become achievable under different growth scenarios? And third, what standard of evidence quality is needed to withstand adversarial legal challenges? These aren't just hypothetical questions. The model provides concrete, data-driven answers. Here's what makes TI One Voice's approach so powerful. The data collection model. The platform uses 6 carefully designed structured interviews, covering everything from onset stories to weekly attack documentation, evidence and clues, damages assessment, and life events. Together, these generate roughly 3,000 structured data points per active TI every year. Over 5 years, the platform is projected to accumulate 1.4 million total records. That's 516 structured questions across 57 sections. And here's a key insight. The attack documentation interview, completed weekly, generates 72% of all data volume. It's the primary ongoing evidence source, providing the continuous stream of data that the pattern detection algorithms need. Now let's look at user growth projections, because this is the single most important variable in the entire model. The study models 3 scenarios. The base case projects 14,000 registered TIs by year 5. The high-growth scenario with 90% more adoption reaches 26,600. And the low-growth scenario with 90% less reaches just 1,400. Here's what's striking. The timeline difference between the best and worst scenarios is 5 to 7 years. That means every TI who signs up and actively documents their experience genuinely accelerates justice for the entire community. User adoption isn't just helpful, it's the determining factor. This slide lays out the 5 sequential milestones of justice. Milestone 1 is identification, projected around 2028, where the platform's algorithms statistically identify perpetrator networks through cross-case entity resolution and geographic clustering. Milestone 2 is indictment around 2030, when formal criminal charges are brought based on the assembled evidence. Milestone 3 is conviction around 2032, where a court finds defendants guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Milestone 4 is sentencing around 2033, when the court determines punishment. And milestone 5 is incarceration from 2033 onward, when sentences are actually served. These are 50th percentile projections under the base case. Think of it as a realistic roadmap from data collection to actual accountability. Not all data is equally valuable for building a legal case, and that's where the evidence quality score comes in. The EQS is a composite score based on 4 factors. Corroboration density, weighted at 35%, measures how many other TIs independently report matching details. Data completeness at 25% tracks what percentage of structured fields are filled in. Temporal proximity at 20% rewards data recorded soon after an event. And cross-reference richness at 20% counts links to other interviews, events, and entities. An EQS of 7 or above is considered evidentiary grade, meaning it could potentially be presented in court. Here's the exciting part. By year 4, 52% of all data points reach this threshold, and by year 5, that jumps to 63%. The evidence just keeps getting stronger over time. Now we come to a critical concept, Milestone 0 official recognition. This is the insight from the addendum study. Before any of the 5 justice milestones can happen, institutions must first accept that the TI phenomenon is real, not a product of mental illness or conspiracy thinking. This is the first domino, and when it falls, the rest follow. There's a frustrating catch-22 at play here. Authorities won't investigate because they believe TIs are mentally ill. And then the lack of investigation is cited as proof that there's nothing to investigate. Breaking this circle requires evidence so robust, so well documented, and so statistically compelling that dismissal becomes untenable. That is precisely what the evidence construction engine is designed to produce. Official recognition unfolds across three institutional pillars, each with different evidence requirements. Pillar 1 is law enforcement, with a recognition index threshold of 55 to 65, projected for Q1 2029. They need to see statistical impossibility of coincidence, actionable investigative leads, and evidence presented through trusted channels. At least 500 TIs with completed clues interviews are needed. Pillar 2 is government and legislature, threshold 60 to 70, projected for Q3 2029. They need at least 3,000 signed declarations, aggregate damages exceeding 100 million euros, and cross-border patterns spanning at least 5 countries. Pillar 3 is medical and scientific recognition, threshold 65 to 75, projected Q1 2030. They need coherent symptom profiles, objective RF and EMF measurements, epidemiological patterns, and at least one peer-reviewed publication. To quantify progress toward recognition, the study develops the recognition index, a composite score from 0 to 100. Think of it like a loading bar for institutional acknowledgement. It's built from 5 sub-indices. The data volume index at 20% tracks total structured data points relative to the 1.4 million target. The corroboration density index at 25%, the heaviest weight, measures average cross-case matches. The geographic pattern index at 20% counts confirmed geographic temporal clusters. The medical documentation index at 20% tracks TIs with medical records and environmental measurements. And the methodological credibility index at 15% assesses audit trail completeness and peer review status. Each institutional pillar triggers recognition at a different RI threshold, reflecting their different evidentiary standards. Here we see the recognition timelines across all 3 growth scenarios. And there's a really exciting finding here. Under the base case, all 3 institutional pillars achieve recognition within a single 12-month window, from Q1 2029 to Q1 2030. This compressed window is incredibly powerful because it creates cascading institutional momentum. When law enforcement opens an investigation, it triggers media coverage that accelerates governmental attention. When governments commission inquiries, it provides the institutional legitimacy that the medical community requires for peer-reviewed publications. The high-growth scenario compresses this even further, achieving all 3 recognitions within just 6 months. That's the power of community participation. The study also maps out crime severity categories and their corresponding sentencing ranges. Category 1 covers organized harassment coordination, things like directing stalking campaigns, with sentencing ranges of 2 to 7 years and an estimated 60,000 perpetrators. Category 2 is technology-enabled assault, including directed energy weapons, with 5 to 15 years and about 30,000 perpetrators. Category 3 covers surveillance and privacy violations, 3 to 10 years, 25,000 perpetrators. Category 4 is command responsibility, those directing the programs, with 10 to 25 years and about 15,000 perpetrators. And Category 5, the most severe, covers torture and crimes against humanity, carrying 20 years to life imprisonment for the estimated 3,300 senior leaders. These ranges are based on established legal frameworks including the ICC statute, EU framework decisions, and both Belgian and US sentencing guidelines. To validate these projections, the study looks at historical precedents. How long did official recognition take for phenomena that share key characteristics with the TI experience? Havana syndrome took 4 to 5 years from first reports to legislative action. Gulf War syndrome took 7 to 17 years. Chronic fatigue syndrome took 10 to 31 years. And PTSD took about 10 years to be included in the DSM. The TI One Voice projection of 3 to 4 years for first recognition sits at the faster end of this range. Why? Because unlike all these historical cases, the platform has purpose-built data collection infrastructure and AI-powered analysis from the very beginning. The closest precedent is Havana syndrome at 4 to 5 years, but those victims were government employees with institutional advocates. TIs must build stronger evidence to compensate, and that's exactly what this platform enables. This is one of the most exciting parts of the model, the recognition cascade. Each recognition event triggers a positive feedback loop that accelerates the next. When Pillar 1 falls and law enforcement opens an investigation, the model projects a 25 to 40% surge in TI signups, plus investigative data sharing begins. When Pillar 2 falls and governments commission inquiries, there's a 30 to 50% sign-up surge, plus funding for platform improvements. And when Pillar 3 falls and medical classification is published, there's a 50 to 100% sign-up increase, and crucially, medical evidence becomes admissible in court. The combined effect is dramatic. Post-recognition, the full justice timeline is compressed by an estimated 2 to 3 years. Once the first domino falls, momentum builds rapidly. This sensitivity analysis table shows justice milestone dates across all 3 scenarios, side by side at the 50th percentile. Under the base case with 14,000 TIs, we see identification in 2028, indictment in 2030, conviction in 2032, sentencing in 2033, and first releases by 2033 to 2036. The high-growth scenario with 26,600 TIs accelerates everything by 1 to 2 years. And the low-growth scenario with just 1,400 TIs delays everything by 3 to 5 years. This comparison really drives home the message. The more TIs who participate, the faster justice arrives for everyone. It's not just about individual documentation, it's about collective power. The study concludes with 6 strategic recommendations. First, prioritize law enforcement engagement. Target agencies experienced with complex crime cases and present evidence as professional investigative briefs. Second, implement the environmental baseline interview for our F and EMF measurements right away. Objective measurement data is what separates compelling evidence from pure testimony. Third, concentrate geographic outreach in 5 to 10 metro areas with existing TI networks. Aim for at least 30 active TIs per area within year 1 to enable cluster analysis. Fourth, build the academic bridge by engaging researchers in neuroscience and epidemiology early. Fifth, seek a parliamentary champion. Even one MEP asking a formal question citing platform data constitutes a major breakthrough. And sixth, maximize early data quality. 500 TIs at 90% completion rates outweigh 2,000 TIs at 40%. Quality matters enormously in those crucial early stages. And here's the bottom line. The path is clear. Recognition by 2029. First indictments by 2030. Convictions by 2032. Justice is a measurable engineering problem, and the data is being built right now. Every single TI who documents their experience moves the entire community closer to the tipping point. Thank you for watching. To learn more or to participate, visit the TI One Voice platform at onevoice.wittis.org. Together we can turn data into justice.